I'm live. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I will wait a moment for you all to join. Just so you know, I can see your comments as they come in through LinkedIn. I can see reactions, but I can't respond via text. So if you drop questions in throughout this live, I will be able to answer them, but I won't be able to type and answer them at the same time. But that seems pretty obvious, doesn't it? All right. So today, it's looking good.
You're good.
Producer Dom has given me the thumbs up. Also, I don't even want to say his name. My dog is right behind me. I'm afraid if I say his name, he's going to get excited and want to be in the actual stream. But he's over there in the shadows. So he also says good morning to you. All right. So today, what we're going to be talking about are the myths of community building that I've been hearing in 2022. Some of these are evergreen, meaning that they've been going on for a long, long time. And some of these I've been hearing either more in this year, or I've been hearing for the first time, and we've got to address them. Because building community is really hard, vulnerable, frankly, exposing work. And so we want to make sure that we're aware of any myths that we might be kind of doing our work by that are not serving us anymore. So we're going to go through 6 of those today, and you're welcome, as I said, to ask me any questions about them. If you have your own experience with them, you can share that in the comments as well. So yeah, let's dive in. Okay, so what I want to talk about today are these 6 myths, and there's a lot of tensions between them. And that's one of the things that as community builders, we have to deal with a lot, are tensions. I'm just checking with producer Dom here for a second. Is everything okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Just making sure the focus is all good. You're great.
Is it good? Am I in focus? I'm in focus. All right. Hello, everyone. So yeah, a lot of these things are about tension. Our work has to be in tension with many, many factors, many stakeholders. We operate within a system, not a silo as community builders. So the first myth that I have been hearing a lot of this year is that there is only one best way to be a community leader, that if you can just learn those best practices and do the things that you've been told to do, that you will show up perfectly and that you will be the leader that people need. The truth is that whether you want to be a leader who is more, behind the scenes and doing work, kind of more orchestrating the work versus somebody who's on stage and the voice of the community, or someone somewhere along that spectrum, that it doesn't matter. It's a dynamic kind of relationship that you're going to have as a community leader. A dynamic relationship with yourself, constantly in conversation with, am I showing up in the way that I want to be showing up? And a dynamic relationship with your members. Am I showing up in a way that's actually productive to them? So you can see how there's a shadow side to both ends of the spectrum of being the charismatic, loud one. The shadow side to that is that people are going to feel oftentimes taken advantage of, erased, manipulated. Bruce is scratching himself behind me. And the shadow side of the kind of being behind the scenes is that you might feel resentment, that people might not know who the leader is in the community, that newcomers might not know how to get plugged in to resources and things like that. So there's a shadow side to both of these extremes, and we have to find where along the spectrum we think we fit best, and then be in constant conversation with ourselves about how to move forward from there. So there's no one best way to lead. I actually do teach a community leadership course, and I teach frameworks of leadership, thoughts of leadership, research that's been done on effective leadership. Some things that we do know are like openness, warmth, charisma. These things that make up charisma actually are really, really important to relational leadership, but there's no one way to be warm, to be charismatic. It's all culturally specific and all of that. So there is not one way to lead. Fear not. You're not doing something wrong, okay? You are learning. The second thing that I hear a lot of, and this has been happening a lot this year, is that if you create a community, or if you're in the midst of creating a community, that it will consume you. That there is, when you're actually working on it, that there's no way out. Once you've started it, you can't back out. And for people who struggle with social anxiety, myself included, this can be a really, really scary and demotivating thought, because we feel like, okay, well, if I feel brave one day, what if the next day I'm like, I'm totally burned out, I need to sleep for the next week, I can't possibly build a community or lead a community if this is how I am. And the truth is, as I said, I struggle with these things myself. I know many other community builders struggle with anxiety, with depression, other mental health issues, neurodiversity, like all of these challenges that we have as human beings, because that's what we are. It's okay. You can show up as a community builder with all of that. You can show up with all of it. And in fact, it makes you who you are. And I will say that as a community builder myself, and as someone who gathers people, that oftentimes when I'm feeling anxious or low energy or whatever it might be, I just name it when I'm in community with other people. And in fact, I've noticed that when I do that, that it helps other people let their guard down as well, because we're all dealing with our own own shit, in addition to global stuff that affects all of us. So just because you might feel like you need to be on it all the time, you do not need to be on it all the time. You can step back. You get to control and create the structures for what works best for you. So this myth that you have to constantly be in it, and that if you struggle with things like social anxiety and depression, you can't do it, false, patently false. Okay. The third thing that I hear a lot, and this is kind of connected to these two, is that what you're creating, the community that you're creating, needs to be either perfect or better than, insert community name or competitor name. Excuse me, I'm gonna grab some water. So if you're in an industry where another company, for instance, is building community, you might think, well, if we're gonna build a community, then it has to be better than our competitor. And the truth is that there's no black and white better than. In some cases, there's some pretty bad communities out there. And so it's not hard to be like objectively better than another community. But in most cases, it's just about your unique values, your unique voice, and what you're going to bring to the table. And anything that you're building with a community will never be perfect. And in fact, when things are perfect in communities, it's not really a community at that point, because nobody can really contribute anything to it. So perfect in community building actually looks a lot more like constantly being in touch with your members, constantly gathering feedback, iterating, making improvements, not launching broken, but launching with your best possible guesses and hypotheses about the best ways to serve people. Okay, so it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be objectively better than XYZ community. Different people have different preferences. And again, excuse me, this is about having your own unique voice and values. If you struggle with those things and you don't have your unique voice and values down, I highly recommend going to my website, CarrieMelissaJones.com. Going up to the top, there's actually a free workshop that you can watch, in which I talk about the structures of community design. And two of those structures within community design are values and voice. So I talk at a high level about how to actually create those, and you can put those into context. So if that's something that is holding you back, if you're feeling like I have to create something perfect, or I just have to make sure that it's better than everything else I've ever seen, just don't do that to yourself. It's not serving you in any way. And you're certainly not serving your members if you're holding yourself back from showing up in the way that you uniquely can. Okay, so again, some water. So number 4, my goodness, I've been talking a lot this week. Number 4 is this concept, and again, this is something that has been coming up a lot this year, of if you're burned out or if you feel overwhelmed, you cannot build community, and you're going to have to step back entirely, take a huge break, and then come back to it. This is also not true. And I know this because I myself have believed this myth before. Actually, early in my career, I burned out so badly that I felt like I could not just be kind of half in, half out in a way. And I burned out. Oh my goodness.
You're doing great. Adrian says it's okay to drink some water.
I know Adrian's always my like, stay hydrated, buddy. Oh my goodness. So this is also not true. A lot of us are operating at all times at some level of feeling somewhat overwhelmed, somewhat burned out, some more than others. And this is not something that you have to do alone. at these times, if you are feeling burned out, if you are feeling overwhelmed, this is when it is time to ask for help. Time to ask your team. It's time to ask a friend for an outside perspective. It's time to maybe take a step back for an hour or so and think about what you can hand off and delegate, or what you might not even need to be doing right now for yourself. We often think about self-care instead of thinking about community care. But in fact, when we reach out and ask people for help and we can receive that help, it is extremely revitalizing to do this. And what I mean by this is, for instance, I was feeling pretty burned out in December, and I was, leading my community and having these end of year events and kept trying to keep up with posts in the community and moderation and all of that. And it came time for our year end kind of reflection. And I was going to facilitate this event where we were going to look back at the year and make some plans for the coming year. And I just thought, like, I cannot. I'm so burned out. I can't do this. Like, my reflection is, I can't do this. And so what I did at this point was I actually reached out to one of the students who I know is really interested in facilitation, and she's been wanting to facilitate in the community. And I said, I could really use your help here. And actually, she said, yes, I will facilitate this on your behalf. And she looked at it as an opportunity to show up generously, to practice her skills and the thing that she really loves to do, and to get really creative. So the ask was actually a way for her to show up and be this most generous version of herself, and to practice and become stronger at her skills. And for me to actually, I attended the event. It was so amazing to be the recipient of that kind of community care, where someone else was holding the space in my community and I could just be there. And I have to tell you that I felt so energized by that. So even coming into it, I felt so burned out. But by the end of that event and the series that we did a series of content after that, I just felt, I'm not going to say healed better, because I don't know about you, but I'm feeling like this is just, we're operating at a constant level of somewhat burned out right now, many of us. But I did feel much better, and I felt revitalized and ready to come back. And also knew that if I still felt burned out, I could ask people for help, which is what you can do as a community leader. And in fact, if you're never asking people for help, then you're not really building community. You're building dependence on yourself and kind of your ability to orchestrate everything. And you just can't do that long term. It's not scalable. Hi, Bruce. He's going to go upstairs. He's like, I'm sick of hearing you talk. So number 5 is this idea that you cannot step away from your community. And so, as you just saw, this is also patently false. You absolutely can step away from your community. You absolutely do not need to be checking in on your community at 5 o'clock in the morning, at 2 o'clock in the morning, even if it's a global community. You get to set the boundaries for what is acceptable in your community. And if you have a very large community where you're afraid that if you are not in it 24 hours a day, that something bad might happen, people might attack each other, there might be some kind of rule breaking, whatever it might be, then it's time to bring on moderation help, because you cannot be the sole person in there all the time. But oftentimes what I'm seeing is not so much that people are really afraid something bad's going to happen, but actually they're afraid of what will happen when they're not present to the community. And in some cases, it means that nothing will happen. And in other cases, in the best of cases, especially after you've been involved in your community for a while and have helped create these cross connections in your community, you'll see that it goes on and people show up and surprise you with what they do together when you're not there. And I think this myth comes from this concept that we as community builders are somehow saving people, or are these paragons of excellence. And I think many of us would not admit that, myself included. But there's definitely ego tied up in that concept of I need to be in there 24 hours a day. There's a lot of ego in that. And the truth is that you can take a break and you can step back. But it's all about communication. So don't just drop off and not explain things to people, but simply say, these are our hours of when we are here. This is the hours when we're not here. Just be really clear about what you're there to do and what you're not available for. Okay. Now, the final myth, and this is reaching a fever pitch right now, is that there is so much going on in the world. So much going on in the world. My community does not matter. So I'm going to step back and not do anything right now. Or we're going to, on the opposite side of that, we're going to totally ignore that these things are happening in the world and we're not going to talk about them. And we're going to see that people are, struggling, but we're not going to do anything about it. So what I will say about this is, unless you are a therapist, you're not a therapist. You will know if you're a therapist or not. You'll have a license. Okay. So you don't have to hold these things for people, but you do need to go back to your purpose right now. If you're feeling like there's so much going on in the world and my community does not matter, go back to your purpose. If you have not articulated it already, you need to articulate it. And again, that workshop on my website can help you for free create a structure for what that purpose statement is. And a lot of times when people write those on their own, they're kind of still wishy-washy. But when I work with my clients, we create a purpose statement that is galvanizing and reminds them, like really ignites a fire in their belly and reminds them, you know what, we are here to do really, really important work. And yes, there's a lot going on in the world. And in some cases, we're actually actively countering some of what's going on in the world, some of the crisis that's happening. We're actually mobilizing to kind of be a balm to that. And in other cases, it's like, we can't address that explicitly, but here's what we can do. And this is really important. Say you're a developer community. This is really important so that this technology can continue functioning, so that a business can continue to function, so that our economy can continue to function, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything in this world is connected. And so no matter what your piece in this puzzle is, it matters. It matters. And if it does not feel like it matters right now, again, revisit that purpose statement. In addition, if that workshop is not quite exactly what you're looking for, I'm actually opening up a new cohort of the Engage Your Online Community Accelerator program coming in this April, May. I'm actually postponing it because of some other stuff that's going on. But it will be reopening and you can join that. And that's a thing that we work really, really, really hard on. And 90% of the students that go through the cohort program say that they feel like they have a purpose that is galvanizing and ignites that fire in their belly by the end of it. So that's really what is going to be your guiding light through these kinds of times. Okay, so these are the 6 myths that I've just gone over. I'm going to be sharing, this video will be on LinkedIn in perpetuity. And I'm just going to check if there's any comments here before I wrap things up. Yes, Adrian says spring cleaning doesn't only need to happen in the spring. Yeah, this is one thing I actually forgot to mention is that one of the best ways to create a scalable community is actually to take a vacation. And what I mean by this is if you need to take a vacation, if you're planning on taking a week off and you're going to Aruba, which I know some people who are on this stream have done in the recent past, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to write down what you do and delegate it, or you're going to have to communicate to your community members what happens when you're not there. And so what that does is it starts to create policies and processes that you can then delegate, and that creates a scalable community. And that vacation is a forcing function for you to sit down and create those processes, because again, I know I've worked with hundreds of people and they put off these creating these standard operating procedures, these playbooks. They're like, I have it in my head, so it's fine. But when you actually take a vacation, say it's 5 days, say it's 10 days, you can't be checking in on, say you go completely offline, which is what I prefer to do. Go into the woods, there's no internet access. You can't be keeping things in your head while you're gone. So instead, you've got to write them down and hand them off to people. So taking a vacation is actually a really, really effective forcing function to get yourself to create processes for scale. So spring cleaning can also be creating those processes, cleaning those processes up, making sure that they're clear to other people. And you'd be surprised, again, how much of this work you can hand off, delegate, and people will do a fantastic job, even better than maybe you're even doing because you're stretched so thin as a community builder. All right. So, all right. Yes, water is so important. There's a lot of comments in here about drinking water and staying hydrated, and it is so important. And I often forget to drink water. Sometimes I forget to breathe deeply while I'm checking my email and things like that. So it is really important. And especially when we're working on things that we're deeply, deeply passionate about and we're all emotionally connected to, it can be really easy to dissociate from our bodies. when we are so, so deeply passionate about the people that we're gathering in the purpose. And so we can often leave our bodies and work only in our heads and forget the basic necessities of drinking water and all these things. And it's so critical because it's that long standing metaphor of putting on your own oxygen mask first. It's just true. It's a cliche because it's true that if you are not taking care of yourself, you cannot show up for other people in the best way possible. All right. So if you were holding on to any of these myths, if they were holding you back in any way leading up to this, I hope that you feel like you might be liberated from some of these myths that have been stopping you from showing up fully in your role as a community builder or a community leader, however you see yourself. And if you still feel stuck in any of them, please know that I'm here. You can share the myth with me and I can totally bust it for you because we've got to show up right now. We've just got to show up and we're never going to do it perfectly. So let's keep doing our work. Let's also make sure that we rest. Let's also make sure that we ask people for help because that is an opportunity for them to be completely, deeply generous. You're actually giving them an opportunity there. Let's make sure to drink water. Let's make sure to eat all these important things and just keep doing the great work that you're doing. All my respect to you, everybody that's here right now and everybody watching this recording. And I will see you soon. Bye, everyone.